Live from the Business Radio X studio inside Renaissance Bank, the bank that specializes in understanding you. It's time for North Fulton Business Radio.
And hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of North Fulton Business Radio. I'm John Ray, and folks, we are broadcasting as we usually are from inside Renaissance Bank in beautiful Alpharetta. And if you are tired of the mega bank experience, if you're tired of trying to find a live person and you just can't do it to save your life, for example, maybe you need to check out Renaissance. Here's what the clients I refer to Renaissance tell me about their experience there, that they're big enough to handle pretty much any need that you can throw at them as a small business, but they're small enough to deliver their services in a personal way. And that's a magic combination that's hard to find in the banking industry. So go to renaissancebank.com and find one of their local offices and give them a call. I think you'll be glad you did. Renaissance Bank, understanding you, member FDIC. And now I want to welcome Jason Coultas. Jason is president of Huckleberry Enterprises. Jason, welcome.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for taking some time to come in and tell your story. Let's talk about you and how you're serving folks out there.
So we operate in the landscape space, wearing two uniforms. Basically, we've got our business to business. That's going to be your commercial and homeowners associations, landscape maintenance, along with ancillary services we call enhancements. So that's going to be detention ponds, drainage and erosion work, irrigation maintenance. And we have a design team. We have two designers that work with us on simple design. It could be seasonal color, flowers at the entrance, or a major overhaul of the entire landscape. And then we have our residential design build services. So that's going to be your average homeowner. And again, we don't discriminate with minimums and things like that. So we just view everybody as our friend and part of our community. So it could be a simple trees and shrubs in the front yard, all the way up to retaining walls and patios, covered roof structures, covered patio with a fire pit. Mm-hmm. So it's basically the limit as to what our design team is willing to put on paper, and the dream that the homeowner has, the client has, how they want to use their space.
Yeah, that's remarkable work in a lot of different ways. And we're going to get into that here in a second, folks. But let's talk about you, Jason, and your journey and your passion for this work. How did that develop?
So my early years, typical of somebody with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. That is, college didn't really make a lot of sense to me, and I enjoyed working outside, working with my hands. So I worked in different trades. And I also learned pretty early on, I like working with people. I like problem solving. I like listening and understanding. And so as I became a homeowner, I started messing around in my own yard and just fallen in love with horticulture. I really honestly didn't know it, but there's a whole trade, a whole world out there to me, I grew up in South Florida. So the landscape space was basically mowing St. Augustine. That's what I saw happening a lot of. And I did grow up mowing the grass, and we didn't have a lot of landscaping. It was just grass.
Sure.
So as I learned about horticulture and just fell in love with the science of growing things and keeping things healthy, I went to a tech school, which is now called Chattahoochee, but it was North Metro Tech in Ackworth, and got a horticulture diploma. So it's basically 2 years of very hands-on training. Mm-hmm. And it was really during that time that I figured out what my future was. It started off just, what am I going to do? I don't know. I could end up in a greenhouse somewhere growing plants. That was back before cannabis. I didn't end up growing. There's a lot of different directions that you can go in the horticulture world.
For sure.
And it's been interesting as I've gotten to know other people. There is a lot of different directions that people end up in. And I was fascinated with all of those. I even took a class on garden center management and things like that. In my mind, at one point, Huckleberry will have a garden center, because that's a great way to connect with clients and meet design build opportunities and things like that.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing about this industry that I don't love. But in being in the landscape space, just evolved as I was in school, and I've been in it 20 years now, and I don't love it any less than I did before. But I've also learned a lot. I've become an arborist in the process, which again is just part of the passion for understanding what's happening with the trees, and specifically in the maintenance space. So think about if you have 20 acres of property that you're responsible for maintaining. what percentage of that property is trees? So trees are your largest landscape plant, basically.
Yeah.
And it's the most valuable asset in any landscape is the trees.
I want to get into that in just a second. But one of the things we were talking about before we came on was that for you, the people that are the most important piece of it.
That's right. Yeah.
Not the profit and not necessarily even what you do.
Correct.
So say more about that.
Yeah. So what's the value? Let's say we can produce an award-winning landscape design build project, or I'll tell you a funny story. So on the maintenance side, I worked for a company that had a maintenance client right across the street from the governor's mansion. And I learned after working at the property for a while that the homeowners didn't actually ever spend any time there. I think they were there 1 or 2 weeks a year. It was like a third or fourth house for them. So when they had business in Atlanta, they would stay in this house. Essentially, we were maintaining the landscape at an empty house. And it was very unsatisfying because week in and week out, you're not making an impact. So for me, it's the impact you're making with your clients, or it's the interaction you're having with your crew. I remember times where I would work by myself for various reasons, and that to me wasn't as enjoyable because I enjoyed the interaction with the guys I was working with. So it's always about the people for me. It's about the impact we make on the client. In the HOA space especially, you'll hear a lot of people, they'll complain about the HOA space, and I absolutely love it. I love the dynamic of managing varying personalities in a board of directors. The property managers are never the client. So even though they may initiate the business in some way, ultimately the board is the client. Same thing in a commercial space. The property manager represents the owner, right? But there is a service to the property manager. The service is reducing stress, right? Reducing complaints. So we just created a new email address called comments@yourhuckleberry.com, because if we're in a commercial or an HOA space, somebody may have something to say, but they may not necessarily be the client, but we want to hear from them. And right now there's various ways that they can try to get their message to us, but that can create friction along the way. So what we want to do is just have a place that people can go and voice their opinion. When they send the email, they'll get an immediate response that just says, this is not a direct communication with us. We're not going to reply to your email, but we're going to hear everything you're saying. So again, if you're renting a home in an association, then you're the farthest person away from what we would call the client, but you still might have a comment like, hey, every time you guys blow off my front porch, they knock over my flower pot. So in the typical HOA environment, somebody might dismiss that person, take it up with the property manager.
Sure.
But if I was renting in a homeowners association and my flower pot was getting knocked over every time they blew off my porch, I wouldn't like that at all. And I would want somebody to care. And so we want to create an experience for whoever we're working with or around. And so to me, that's the end game, is what kind of experience are we creating?
You said something there that I think is really valuable, because what you're doing for an HOA board, knowing how HOA boards work myself, is you're not just performing a service and making that neighborhood look great, more appealing, but reducing stress is a big thing for an HOA board, right? They've got enough stress with all the complaints and all the issues that they deal with, and it's a thankless job.
That's right. And
so if you can just take a little bit of the pressure off of them, you've done them a big service.
That's right. So in a homeowner's environment, we may be trying to increase the enjoyment that they have in their landscape, right? Sure. We might be planting flowers, doing things, and in a roundabout way, that actually is a dead end, because eventually you can't increase value anymore. Like you've planted all the flowers. Homeowners can get worn down with paying a premium, hiring a high-end company or whatever, because eventually it's like, what have you done for me lately? You have the best looking property in town. Yeah, but I've had that for years now. Give me something else. But in the commercial and the HOA space, that changes because managers change, board of directors change, property owners change. And so it's your ability to navigate change and reduce stress that really adds the value. So preventing or reducing friction or stress it's a negative, but it's not, because if people are accustomed to having friction and you've reduced their friction, then actually you become their greatest asset.
Yeah, you become quite noticeable. Yeah. Wow, that's terrific. You talked about your work as an arborist.
Mm-hmm.
I had somebody say to me one time that trees are the biggest enemy of grass. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, it's almost like in physics, two objects can't occupy the same space at the same time.
Yeah.
There's some correlation there. It's true of all landscape plants in general that there's competition happening, right? So it's not just the sun, it's root competition, it's water, right? Roots will consume so much soil space that there just isn't any more soil to grow roots into if you're another plant, right? And you'll see if you plant a tree and a shrub at the same time, they'll grow old together. But if you try to plant a new shrub on an old tree, it's a totally different story because there's no root space left. So it's not even about how much we're irrigating at that point. It's like, where do I go? So sometimes it's about shade. So people say, oh, if you limb up the tree, can I grow grass? It's not always about those things. And it's a case-by-case basis. What direction is the sun? What kind of tree is this? So yeah, trees and grass don't get along really well. And you have to have a compromise mindset, a mindset of how do I create a transition here? Over time, this tree is going to consume more and more space, which means I'm going to have less and less turf, but we can make a plan to navigate that. You can use ground covers and different landscape plans so that you still have greenery, you still have layering, and all that's part of that design process, but also having a company that understands the evolution and development of a landscape. So if you start off with a design that doesn't understand what this is going to happen, how this is going to progress in the future, and you're also not working, and you also need to be working with a maintenance company that understands how to manage that process.
Yeah, the word you named there that I was getting to is the competition for the space, the resources of the lot or property, what have you, and that requires some thoughtfulness.
Absolutely, yeah, and especially in the world where, we've done a lot of work in Atlanta, in old Atlanta, right? You have old Buckhead properties, and it's interesting because in early days they would carve out a square and build a house on it. So what we will find is old soil, right? You have deep, rich soil that wasn't really disturbed. Now everything is scraped down to nothing, and then they build. It's the perfect environment to build homes, driveways, sidewalks, and asphalt. It's a terrible environment for any kind of plant at all because you have compacted clay soil, oftentimes with rock in it. And sometimes they go right down to what we call hard pan, which is a rock base, right?
Yeah.
So you throw some Bermuda sod down on that and then ask me what's wrong with my grass. And so in a literal sense, we could lay a pallet of sod on your driveway and keep it alive basically indefinitely. But at some point, that perfect environment is going to change. Like one day is going to go by where you don't irrigate and then the entire yard dies and it's a similar thing in laying sod and hard pan or trying to plant a tree in a difficult environment. You'll see tree roots growing along the surface of the ground because there's no soil to grow and there's no oxygen in the ground. So everything that happens in the landscape is what's happening underground. We tend to look at the ground level up, but as a practitioner, we have to think about what's happening down below, and we don't have access to it. We don't have probes. There's no way to X-ray. So some of it is just intuition from being in the industry. You look at a space and say, that looks like compacted soil. And then you have other things that are happening too. What's this dead spot in my yard? You guys sprayed something and killed my grass is the first thing we hear. What did you guys spray on my grass? I got a dead spot. The one that I love the most that we've seen recently was a heat reflection off of a window.
Really?
So it was a southern-facing window, and there was just a big dead spot there. Again, probably not great soil, other issues that maybe, but it was that excess heat and sunlight that was stressing out the turf there and killing it off. We've seen people lay something on the ground for 3 hours in the middle of a hot afternoon, and next thing you have a brown spot, and maybe we're trying to treat for fungus or something else, and nobody happens to remember that they put a kiddie pool in the backyard for 3 hours in the summertime.
Sure.
So there's so many environmental things that are going on.
Which requires a whole lot of interaction with the people again. Yeah. It gets back to the people.
Yeah. And having that trust relationship, understanding that we're all trying to get to the end goal here. We don't want you to have dead spots in the grass or give us an opportunity to try to solve the issue. We've got dog urine that's happening, and there's just all these different environmental factors. And we want to help you find a solution because if you're not happy, then we can't be happy either.
What are the biggest mistakes, Jason, made out there? Let's talk from a HOA perspective, from a B2B perspective, and then talk about individual homeowners from their perspective. What are the biggest mistakes that you see made out there when it comes to dealing with your landscape and designing that and maintaining it?
In the design space, it all starts with the design, right? Because everything starts with a blank slate. So from a design standpoint, so I live in downtown Woodstock, and somebody just redesigned and built a space between two restaurants. It was really nice sycamore trees with benches and a lot of flowering plants, and it was a cozy space. The sycamore trees were dying and something had to happen, so they recreated it. They used artificial turf, so there was a kind of an open space, and there was small landscaped areas now. They eliminated a lot of the green space. Mm-hmm. In that very limited space, and maybe 4 or 5 feet between the sidewalk and a wall, just a simple wall, like a seating wall, there was 3 layers. It was a boxwood hedge up against the wall, and then there's some hydrangea paniculata, which is like a limelight hydrangea, so they grow big and they send out big white flower stalk of flowers in the summer. And then in front of that was some switchgrass. Switchgrass is going to get 6 feet tall and as wide as you'll let it get in no time at all. Those hydrangeas are going to get, if you never touched them, 12 feet tall, 12 feet wide. Mm. And so by next year, like I'm not talking 10 years from now, by next year, the whole thing's just going to be an overgrown mess. So from a design standpoint, having a long-term view of what this is going to look like, but also providing today's satisfaction. So some designers are going to plant very far apart and try to think in 10 years, this is all going to get crowded, but that's a disservice to the now. So you have to balance that out. Think about the sustainability of plants. We don't want to introduce new cultivars right away because we haven't seen them perform. So you'll see lots of trendy new cultivars on the market, and they end up in people's landscape designs because it's fun. And
define cultivars for folks that don't know that term.
So in the old days, you would have a plant, it's privet. So you would have, my wife's granddad, who grew up in Chattanooga, mm-hmm. called it wild hedge because they took this wild thing and planted it into a hedge because you could trim it and it would stay trimmed. It would be a hedge. Mm. But it escaped into cultivation, and so now everybody hates it because it's everywhere and it's annoying. People keep trying to cultivate that into something cute. So there you have a new one. It's called Sunshine Ligustrum. You can call it ligustrum if you want. It's still a privet. So eventually it reverts back to green and it starts dying back and has dead patches in it. So when somebody introduces a new plant variety, you can call it. Yeah. So we could call it Ligustrum John Ray because you figured out how to make this plant have a new color or produce a new color flower. Mm-hmm. So it's a cultivar because you cultivated it and you named it. If you introduce new cultivars, new varieties, you got to let other people experiment with it for a while to see how it works out.
Got it.
Cold tolerance, fungus issues, drought tolerance, all those things have to be tested. If you're selling new plants, you're not going to necessarily wait for 5 or 10 years of testing, right? You're going to just get it out on the market. We got to let somebody else mess around with that and figure out what really works. So all that has to be part of that design process. And then as you move into maintenance, I'd say the biggest thing I see happening is just that the commoditization of landscape maintenance. So there's enormous price variations, especially in the residential space. Somebody asked me to give them a maintenance quote. I'm looking at it and I already know it's $600 or $700. They want push mow only, blah, blah, blah. They want high level of detail. Mm-hmm. Jason, I'm paying $60 a visit now. So they're paying this guy every week when he shows up. They're paying $240 a month for me to do it at $600. Why? All the reasons that are obvious, right? A low bidder, what kind of labor is he using? Does he have workers' comp insurance? So when a guy cuts his foot with a metal ledger, it's your responsibility because he's working on your property.
Right.
Unless he has workers' comp. So there's things, the low bid process, just like I said, the general commoditization. There's always a new company that's willing to do it for less because they're going to build their business starting with low bidding to get into the industry and then start raising their prices. They're cheap today, but what's going to happen next year? Their prices are going to go up or they're just going to stop showing up because they got busy with higher value work. So picking a long-term partner is really ideal. Somebody that's going to be with you long enough to go through the phases that your landscape is going through and help you manage that.
Jason Coultas is with us, folks. Huckleberry Enterprises is his company. We were talking before we came on the air, and one of the things that you said was that at the end of the day, you're here to affect people.
Correct.
That has nothing to do with trees and plants and grass. So let's tell everyone what you mean by that.
So our motto is relentlessly pursuing excellence. And we just had a talk with our team this morning, and I asked them, what does excellence mean to you? And of course, I got blank stares because nobody really knows how to define that. And my answer was, you know what excellent is and what it isn't. When you see something, you can tell me that's excellent or that's not. And so we want to create an excellent experience for our clients, and we're doing that with trees and shrubs, right? We're doing that with a paver patio or a retaining wall or fixing drainage and erosion issues. Random example, we're working on a $50,000 detention pond restoration at a large HOA, and there's a homeowner's drainage problem that's causing massive erosion in the detention pond. Could go about this a number of different ways. At the end of the day, what I'm trying to do is resolve the conflict in partnership with the association, understanding that there's a whole dynamic that they're dealing with. The homeowner is not responsive. They don't want to participate. They're blaming everybody else. So instead of me being robotic and just saying, here's the facts, what I'm saying is, I understand what the end goal of this association is, to minimize cost and reduce the conflict that they have with their. So the solution is we provide a repair that sort of tolerates what the homeowner is doing in a way that meets all of the expectations based on what's realistic, right? So in a perfect world, we could require the homeowner to do their part.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, we pass that cost onto the homeowner because that's affecting our property. But we know that's not realistic, and we know that by listening to the board members and the property manager and understanding what's really happening, and that's what partnership looks like. And I think that comes in time. If I was just go get a horticulture diploma and maybe work on a crew for a couple of years and learn the craft, you throw me into an account management role or some kind of sales role, and I'm not going to necessarily know how to navigate through that. So at the end of the day, we want to be excellent, but we want to be excellent in a way that understands who it is we're working with, who we're affecting, and how to navigate the personalities. And here's the thing that I think is important. Also knowing when to just walk away, right? So if I've worn you out in some way or another that you have to terminate service with us or whatever, it's probably because there was a signal early on that said this ain't working. So we need to figure out how to avoid that by always having a win mindset. And we have core values, and our number one value is win. So at all times, I want us to be thinking about the client winning, but also us winning. Because when we have an uncomfortable client, something's not going well, it wears everybody out. It wears the team out. The guys in the field doing the work are getting friction. They don't want to be there. And then 80% of our energy gets consumed by that small percentage of frustrated clients. So a really good conversation sometimes is, I'm not sure that this is a good fit. So if we can't clearly define what the expectations are here and make a commitment to each other that we're going to meet these expectations, we're going to work hard to get there, and then we're going to be satisfied and we're all going to call it a win. If we can't make that agreement, then maybe the best thing to do is we can even help you find a new contractor that maybe is a better fit for you. Because again, it goes back to everybody's connected. So if you're a property manager and you see the frustration going on and you feel like we're frustrating the client, you're less likely to refer me to other properties or other property managers. So if I help you navigate through that, and that means me walking away, then your perception of who we are is actually improved by us actually leaving.
Yeah.
So this is not a regular thing for us. We're not firing clients on a regular basis, but sometimes the conversation is maybe this isn't the best fit. So at the end of the day, it goes back to, if we're not creating a great experience for our clients or the people that we're affecting, which even includes the guys that are working for us, or it includes vendors, the guy delivering material for one of our vendors, we want him to have a good experience, because that's going to affect the work that he does. And we see it every day. The guys that like working with us because we have a good relationship with them, they're going to call me and say, exactly where do you want this soil dumped on the property? They're not going to just drop it in the front yard and block you from getting your car out of the driveway, because they like working with us and they respect us and we respect them and we appreciate what they do. Dumpster delivery, right? All the different things that we do that are internal and not customer facing end up affecting the customer experience. And so we feel like it's all about the people. It's literally about people.
Yeah, that's great. Great. Well, such great wisdom here from Jason Coultas, and all businesses really are affected. That's the dynamic of all businesses,
right. Absolutely.
in one way or the other. The question is just what the product or service is. Let's talk about two things. One is who's a good client fit for you.
Okay.
And then also a success story that might illustrate the great work you do.
So for us, a good client is, whether it's in the maintenance space, we don't do a lot of residential maintenance. Most of the residential maintenance we do is going to be someone that we've done a design build for, or it could be a key relationship, right? Somebody that's a referral partner or closely connected in some way to something we're doing.
Sure.
What we don't want to do is we don't want to be a Moblo kind of company with 15 houses in a row. That's a great business for a lot of people. It's not our primary niche. So a good client for us is someone who wants to redesign their space in a residential environment, and then be invested in the maintenance of that space in the future. It doesn't mean we're the highest guys in town, highest price. The cost associated with our work isn't the high profit of our work. It's in the time that it takes to perform the work. So a higher price in the maintenance space really just means more time spent doing the work. And in the commercial HOA business to business world, a good client for us is someone that is looking for a partner, a consultative partner, and an organization that has resources. So there's essentially nothing that we can't do. And if in the few rare situations where it's not a good fit for us, we know who to refer you to. We have engineers that we work with and different professionals that pool companies, like we don't do anything with pools. So we're going to refer you to somebody that's excellent in the pool space, or if you need an engineer to design something, we can build it, but we're going to let them design it. And if it's a problem that we don't know how to solve, we'll just say, hey, I don't know how to solve this problem. Let me go ahead and get with somebody that does, and we'll bring the right people to the table.
Yeah. Terrific. Jason Coultas, folks, Huckleberry Enterprises. Jason, this has been great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I wish we could keep going.
Yeah,
but,
it's been fun.
Yeah, but maybe we can have you back.
That'd be great.
We can talk more, but I want to get to the most important question, which is how folks can find you, because I can imagine there are some folks that want to learn more about your services. So let's tell them how to connect.
So our website is yourhuckleberry.com, and it's okay. We've got a really good team working on a rebuild. So look out for that. I'd say in about a month. And we do spend a good bit of time on social media. So we've got Huckleberry Enterprises on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn as well. And I personally like to post on LinkedIn. So love to connect with you on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, Jason's got some good stuff on LinkedIn, so check that out,
Thank
folks. Jason Coultas with Huckleberry Enterprises. Jason, thanks again. I'm just delighted you could come in, and a big shout out to Sam McElhaney for connecting us. So thank you, Sam. Yeah. Hey, folks, just a couple of quick things before we let you go for today. If you are looking you want to reward yourself, hard week, you want to go out to a great dinner, and not just a great dinner, but one that's authentic, traditional Italian cuisine. The place to go is Casa Nova Italian Restaurant. They're located on Highway 9, just north of McFarland, and they were farm to table before that was cool. They've had a garden behind their restaurant for years. The restaurant itself is 26 years old, folks, so they've had that garden back there for years, and they have fresh tomatoes, corn, peppers, zucchini, herbs that go into their cook-to-order dishes, and they just do terrific work, and it's fabulous. And Maria and her family, which includes the people she employs, not just the ones, not just her kids, but the people she employs. That's the way they look at it out there, and that's why they've had such a great success over the years. And so check them out. CasaNovaRestaurant.com is the website. You can make a reservation. And also don't forget they do great catering as well. And I've got a new book out. It's called The Generosity Mindset, A Journey to Business Success by Raising Your Confidence, Value, and Prices. If you're selling your expertise, this book may be for you. Talks about value, positioning, business development, and of course, pricing. Go to thegenerositymindset.com to learn more and to find out where the book is sold, which is pretty much everywhere. Also, I want to thank you, our listeners. You do you support us in so many different ways. I mentioned Sam McElhaney. Thank you again, Sam, for connecting us with Jason. But Sam's just an example of a number of our listeners that help us in so many ways, send us great guests, like us on social media, share our posts to try to get the word out on the great business leaders like Jason that we have on this show. Thank you for that. And please keep it up because you help us fulfill our mission to be the voice of business in North Fulton and beyond, and we are grateful for your support. So for my guest, Jason Coultas, I'm John Ray. Join us next time here on North Fulton Business Radio.